World Paranormal News with James Creechbaum. Now, the latest news.
This is Night Dreams Talk Radio Network News. I'm James Creechbaum. Researchers may have found the tomb of Queen Nefertiti in the burial place of the famous pharaoh Tutankhamun. Located in the Valley of the Kings, a hidden tomb was discovered where the mother of Tutankhamun, Nefertiti, could be buried. Recently, scientists using ground-penetrating radar studied the tomb of Tutankhamun. Now, the device found a pair of corridors that stretch from Tutankhamun's room to another room 9.5 meters wide and 1.8 meters high. Experts have long believed that the coffins of Tutankhamun and Nefertiti buried together, some rooms of the tomb remain walled up. It is likely that in one of them, the famous female pharaoh is resting. Terrifying Bigfoot screams were recorded in Ohio. A recently uploaded video has captured some interesting and unnerving sounds coming from the woods. Recorded on the afternoon of February the 9th, these mournful screams would be enough to unnerve just about anyone. And the witness goes on, I was inside my house feeding my dog, and me and my dog were both curious as what we were hearing outside. I ran outside as fast as I could to try to understand what it was, but I couldn't understand what I was hearing because I've never heard anything like this ever before in the woods around my house. And he goes on to say, this video is not fake. I swear this just happened out in the middle of nowhere randomly. As things stand, it is unclear exactly what type of creature could have made these sounds. Japan to launch a Phobos sample return mission. Now, Japan's space agency has greenlighted an ambitious mission to retrieve a piece of Mars moon, Phobos. The Japanese space agency's latest endeavor will see it send a robotic spacecraft to Phobos, a tiny 17-mile wide potato-shaped chunk of rock in orbit around Mars. Once there, the probe will land, collect a core sample, then set off on a return journey to Earth. LightSail 2 captures stunning photos of Earth from space. The Planetary Society built a spacecraft which launched in June 2019 on a SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket to prove the potential of solar sailing rather than relying on conventional fuel. LightSail 2 uses a massive sail to catch protons, and that's light particles from the sun, to power the spacecraft's orbit. The goal is for LightSail 2 to remain in orbit for about a year. Psychological effects of alien abduction victims. Alien abductees report similar incidents, have no memory of the event, and are usually aware of a time lapse. Many will have post-traumatic stress syndrome. The typical alien abductee is paralyzed by some unknown force, taken to a small room, examined by big-eyed, gray-skinned, hairless, small creatures. Tissues and cells are sampled. Oftentimes, implants are installed. Abductees are returned to their vehicles or beds and wake up with no conscious memories of the incident. They usually notice that time has mysteriously elapsed. Alien abduction victims share similar experiences recalled under hypnosis. Abduction details have been described by hundreds of people who were hypnotized by psychiatrists, psychologists, and other therapists. Victims are from all countries, ages, genders, and races. Amnesia induced by aliens is extremely effective. Repressed memories can emerge in terrifying nightmares. Many victims recall being told that they will remember the abduction as a dream. Next news break, top of the hour.
Good evening, or morning, depending on your time zone. From the Pacific to the Atlantic to you worldwide. Get yourself a cup of java and find a comfy, easy chair. And get ready for Gary, and his guest on Night Dreams Talk Radio, After Dark. And now,
hello.
Here's Gary.
Hi, this is Gary on Night Dreams Talk Radio. Who am I talking to?
Hey, Gary, this is Carlos. How you doing?
Hi, Carlos. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Well, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, and then we can just kind of go into it.
Okay. I started writing about my experiences with the unknown since I'm a little kid, because there were so many, and I thought I was going to forget them. So I had a little diary where I wrote my stories every day, and there were so many that I stopped writing them, and they never forgot. I never forgot them from my mind. So I decided to write this book, but it took me a long time to publish it because I didn't want to be like a circus item for people to make fun of me, and it took me a long time, a long while. But since I was diagnosed with a very difficult illness, I said, I don't care what people think of me. I'm going to publish the book. So that here we are, with the book published. And right now I'm working on my volume 2 because I have so many experiences that it deserves a volume 2.
Oh, wow. Now, Carlo, how old were you when you started getting these experiences, and what were the experiences?
Okay, when I was 5 years old, 5.5, I requested from my parents to let me stay in my grandparents' farm because it was fun. All my cousins and nieces spent their vacation there, and I wanted to be a part of them, but I was too small. My parents didn't allow me. But when I was about 5.5, almost 6, I begged my parents to let me stay. I don't know, I had this thing inside of me that I wanted to stay. I have to stay for some reason. And with my cousins, without their supervision, because that's what I wanted. I didn't want to have their supervision because they keep me on a leash, So I said I wanted to go on my own with my cousins. And my grandmother is going to be there. My grandfather is going to be there. So I'm okay. So somehow I convinced my parents. They let me in the farm. And a day before we left the farm, I had the experience that motivated me to write this book. And that was, I experienced an extraterrestrial encounter. I saw a chip on top of the house of my grandparents, and I saw aliens, the gray aliens. And, of course, they were not gray. The color that I remember in my head, they were like pale white, like albino kind of skin. And that's what I remember in my head. And we have this communication by telepathy. And that was something that I never forgot. I don't remember what happened in between, but I remember that up to that point where we have the encounter, where I saw the chip on top of the house. Of course, I didn't know it was a chip. I didn't know it was a UFO back in those years. You don't even know anything about aliens. I didn't know anything about nothing like that. And I didn't know there were aliens either. In my head, I thought I was having an encounter with Casper the Ghost,
Well, Carlos,
that's how my mind accepted it,
How tall were they?
Well, I was 5.5, and they were a little taller than me, just a little bit taller than me. So I imagine by now that probably they were under 3 feet, 30 inch, let me see, 3 feet tall, 3.5 feet tall or something like that.
What did they actually look like? Do you remember what their eyes looked like, their head shape and all that stuff?
Sure. When I saw their eyes, this is the typical aliens that you see called as grays, and when I saw their eyes, of course, I got really frightened, but I was under their under their mind control, because I remember walking into another dimension when I saw them. Everybody was asleep in the house. I needed to go out and release myself, and no one wanted to go with me. And I don't know how is it that everybody was sound asleep. All of a sudden, I remember they were talking, and all of a sudden, this silence, and everybody's like knocked out. My grandmother has given me a flashlight, at that moment when I said I need to go to the restroom. And I said, I'm so small, I need to go with somebody, but nobody wanted to go with me because nothing happened back in those years, But now that I'm older, I imagine in my head, what about a snake or something, could have bite me, but nobody went with me. But I think everybody was under this control. The whole atmosphere is under some kind of control, mind control, that I couldn't figure it out back then, but I've been investigating, and I've been reading about other people's experiences, and that's what I think. I think we were under some kind of control, and like when a dimension hole opens up and everything around it is kind of asleep, you don't have control of your own self, so it's like everybody's knocked out. Only the person who's going to have the experience will be alert. And that's what happened to me when I came out of the little farmhouse. I said, I'm not going to go all the way to back then in that farm, they didn't have any electricity or running water. Everything has to be very difficult. They had lamps, kerosene lamps, and the water they brought from the city, the drinking water, the other water is taken from a well. So imagine the conditions in this happens in the 1960s. I was born in 1962, so before the 70s, I was 5.5 years old, and that's what happened. And so I came out of the house, and I already knew I was in another dimension. Of course, I didn't know it was another dimension, like I said back then, but I know now because I have been having these experiences for the rest of my life, so I know when something is completely different. Some people are calling it the Matrix effect now, but I don't know if I can call it that because I really don't know a lot about that specifically. I only know that when things like that are going to happen to me, then your attitude and everything is under certain control. So I came out of the house. I'm illuminating with the flashlight. The flashlight go dead, and I find myself trying to pee up against the wall because my grandmother could hear anything from a million miles away from her. So I was like really frightened. She'll know that I've been, peeing in her garden. When I had this encounter, there was a chicken coop across the house, and that chicken coop, behind the chicken coop is where everything started lighting up. I haven't noticed the spacecraft on top of the house at this moment. I'm only seeing because the chickens are like in fear. They're afraid, and I thought in my head probably a fox, something that is trying to eat a coyote or something. I don't know. And I'm looking over the coop, very scared and very careful not to make any noises. And because you can see a little bit the moon shine through the moonshine, it was dark, but just you still have some moonshine there. And I only hear the chicken being scared, and then when I turn around to pee, then I cannot pee anymore. I'm like really frightened. My body's trembling, and it's like I'm gonna have a heart attack right there and then. And all of a sudden, I see that my body's elevating, floating up, and I'm like really scared. What is this? That I never experienced something like that ever in my life. And as I'm turning, because I'm like floating in the air, and my body's like turning around slowly, very slowly, then I had contact with the being. It was 3 of them, but at that moment I only saw one. That one was floating in the air, too, and it has an aura around it. So in my head, this is Casper. and the guy is coming towards